Welcome to This Is Why Musicians Need Therapy, the podcast where musicians talk about the mental stuff that everyone deals with, usually while pretending they're fine on stage. Full disclosure, they're not therapists, just musicians who've definitely needed one. So settle in, laugh with us, learn with us, and if you're trying to figure out this whole being a musician with feelings thing, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Rich Davidson, and of course, as always, I have Eric Forbes and Craig Henry with me. Guys, how we doing tonight?
Awesome.
Can't complain.
Yay.
Yeah, good.
Yay.
Very good.
Yay.
How are you, Rich?
So we had to, I'm good. I'm tired, but it's been a busy weekend and a busy Monday, but I guess it's better than sitting around doing nothing. So
yep.
I don't mind that too much. And we got to we got to play together this weekend. That was fun.
That was a great show.
Did. That was fun.
Yeah. Haven't.
I have to go to my 20-year high school reunion.
Oh, that's right. That's this weekend.
That makes me feel a little old.
So wait. I know. Gosh, I'm thinking. Let's see. For me, 1988. What is that? I'm trying to do the math on that. That's stupid. That is so dumb. It's like what 40 years close to that.
Coming up.
Gosh. Yeah. So where is it over in Mint Hill? Is that where you're going to be?
Charlotte. In Charlotte.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I grew up outside of Charlotte in Mint Hill. Yeah, it's Charlotte, the school I went to.
All right. Any big plans for you this weekend, Craig?
I'm back in Atlanta this weekend. I got to drive on Saturday to Atlanta, and then I have a gig in High Point on Sunday. And I just realized High Point is the self-proclaimed maybe furniture capital of the world.
Yes.
Dare I say it?
It's the
Yes,
furniture
it is.
capital of the world. Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
is.
it's a gig for. There must be some sort of furniture expo happening. So yeah, that'll be fun.
That'd be a safe bet. Cool. So what I wanted to talk about tonight, it's kind of, I guess it kind of hits a little close to home to a certain extent. And and some of my doom scrolling on TikTok and Instagram, which I have to admit that I do from time to time.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I guess we kind of all do, but I come up to these reels, and it's the nobody. What was it again? Nobody tells you it's this hard to go from this, and like usually it's an artist or a band playing in front of a screaming crowd to this, and then it shows them maybe the same artist or band playing to an almost empty club, or even worse, the drummer sitting down in a cubicle at his office on Monday morning, and then, of course there's different variations of that. But, and it sometimes it kind of gives me a chuckle, but also hits a little close to home sometimes because, now I was never a full-time musician. But for the last 5 years, my job was to be creative, whether it was running sound, playing drums, doing content creation for social media, editing, recording and editing videos, or editing and mixing music and stuff like that. And then, to go from that to what I'm doing now, which is not creative in any way, shape, or form, that's difficult. And I try to take it in stride because, we've all been in places where, we've got to do what we have to do. We have responsibilities, financial responsibilities and whatnot. And so, you kind of suck it up and get it done. But I think it becomes even more difficult given the fact that before having a job where I was just creative. I'd never had a job like that before. And also the fact that I'm not a young man anymore. And then having to go back to that, you just, got to do what you got to do sort of stuff. I guess, and maybe it's my fault that I have the expectation that I shouldn't have to do that anymore. But regardless of whether I should or shouldn't, I'm having to do it.
Yeah.
And it's, it's tough. I don't dwell on it a lot, but there are times where there's really not much to do or not much to think about. And those are the kind of things that kind of creep into my head sometimes. And, maybe there's a way through it. I know that I'm not the only one that experiences this. So, do you guys feel that at any time? Because I know that all of us sometimes have to do stuff outside of music for money. Do you guys feel that? If you do, how do you deal with it, or do you deal with it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I've been pretty fortunate to have stayed pretty consistently working in music for 26 years or so. But, through, I took a lot of risks. There were some times when I wasn't earning a lot of money at all. And then, my wife would sort of pick up the slack a little bit in her job. So we always had each other's back in that regard. That was good. For me, during COVID, that sort of changed the game a lot. And I think it was literally 13 months that I didn't play a single gig. But during that time, I started picking up some like handyman skills, construction skills. I was sort of renovating my basement. And, I moved to North Carolina from California during COVID. So, I didn't really make a lot of connections. I met you guys 2021, I think, but that,
yeah.
But even then, it took a lot of time to get connections and get into the scene and whatnot. Anyway, long story short, I was doing, and in fact, still a little bit to this day, do a little bit of, I took on some handyman customers, and yeah, it was pretty sobering. I would find myself, especially working outside, it was literally backbreaking, like digging holes, and I built some stairs and did various things, some deck repair and in the sun, and it was very strange to have my professional face to customers, be this construction person, and they had no idea that I had this creative side. And I'm not, I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it was just weird for me to have almost an identity shift, if that makes sense. But I enjoyed the work a little bit. I enjoyed the break from music, I think. But in the end, it was tough. I really missed music, and it didn't feel like that's who I was. That's who I wanted to be to the world.
I just feel like sometimes I just feel like I'm so out of place.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Yeah. What do you think about all this, Eric? Or
yeah, I've been, a full-time musician for 14 years now, and from that I kind of came out of college when I was having, I worked at Books A Million, which was just by far the worst job I've ever had. So I kind of came into music, from that, and it's been, consistent, I guess, for that time, definitely in different capacities. But, thinking kind of literally about the video you brought up, playing for a packed stadium to, 5 people.
Yeah.
when I thought about that, it just kind of brought me to something that I struggle with and try and work on daily. Is just finding contentment in things, and just speaking from playing music, because that's been my career kind of out of college. But just speaking in terms of that, I tend to think of the more crowded, lucrative nights as a success, and a smaller, 5 or 10 person crowd, sometimes not even that, as like a failure. But if I can catch myself in the moment and try and find contentment in being able to use what I am good at, to as a living, it kind of helps if I can catch myself. It helps improve my mood. So that's kind of where I went to with it. Just taking literally, playing to the big crowds, and then to the less conventionally successful gigs, and nobody talks about going from that to that. And then I kind of thought of, how do you find contentment in the conventionally less important one? So.
Oh, yeah, I do think there's something to be said about that, because I think that, just for example, this podcast is one of the ways I'm dealing with that lack of creativity, or at least the lack of pay for the creativity. Because I'm still trying to create, I'm still trying to do stuff. So I haven't given up, but sometimes it's very disheartening when you, as I said to Craig earlier, you just feel so out of place. It's like, I don't belong here. And well, maybe you do and maybe you don't, but you're here.
Yep.
And so there are endeavors, as I said, this podcast is one of them, and I'm excited about it, and kind of have a vision for the future with it, but that's the future, and kind of what I'm dealing with is the problems of today. Now, I have work, and it's not even necessarily about the amount of money or anything like that, or the notoriety.
No.
It's just being able to do the stuff that I enjoy, the stuff that I think that I excel at. Of course, there's going to be, there's going to be, remuneration issues. You gotta, at some point, if you're going to call yourself a creative type, whether it's a writer, a painter, a musician, or anything of that nature, you're going to expect to earn some sort of living off that. But it's not about the money for me. At least I don't think it is. It's about, I do want to get value for what I do, but I want to be able to have the ability to do that. And it's very intoxicating when you haven't had it, and then you have it for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you don't have it again.
Yeah.
And you can make plans and set goals and whatnot, but at least for the interim, you're going to be languishing in obscurity for a while, and some people never get past that stage. And maybe that's enough for them. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But I do know that I do know the mental impact of being in a place where you feel like you don't belong there. And, maybe that's kind of egotistical. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Is it? Do you find it? We were talking about this with fear, the other week. Do you find it to be motivating? Does it, knowing the alternative? Do you like I'm not saying that, but by any stretch is it easy. But yeah, can you use it as a motivator?
I think so.
Yeah.
I do. I just think it's those quieter times, because there's sometimes where you don't feel motivated about anything.
Sure. Yeah.
Your brain is tired of running it around, and trying to figure things out, and there's just nothing. And I think those are the times where those intrusive thoughts kind of, or I don't even know if they're intrusive thoughts, but those are the times where everything seems magnified. If you don't feel like you're where you're supposed to be, those are the times where it just feels even more impactful. It's just a stronger feeling. But yeah, I do think, like I said, I do think this podcast, and there are some other things that I'm working on that are a product of, okay, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be doing this day job for the rest of my life. So yeah, it's definitely a motivator.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you need money, right? Like, there's just no other way to say it or get around it. You have to have, an income to survive. But I think, I would argue there's, millions of people that just kind of black out during the day and just get through the day, and then come home and do, what you're doing, which I think is the right thing, and something that I, do as well. I just sink yourself into a creative outlet, different things, and, take chances. Like we were talking, I think last episode, or maybe the episode before that, but it's much easier to, just get yourself out there now. And I'm kind of saying this to myself as much as anyone, because I, have always been anxious about, trying to get a song down and release it, or take any creative chances and broadcast them. It takes it to a whole another level. But I think, I'd venture to say there's so many people that, dream of doing something other than they're doing. And I think just starting to create different creative avenues and just see how they unfold. You never know what's going to happen. And like you said to me many times, Rich, like, you never know how quickly things will happen. Life can change very, very quickly. So,
well, you're right about that. I wish I'd coined the phrase. Unfortunately, I didn't. Although I don't know where I heard it from.
I think of Ferris Bueller.
It might be. I think, Craig, didn't you? Maybe Eric said that. I don't know. I said that life comes at you fast, and somebody said, "Well, that's from," I don't know. Well, it wasn't my quote. I'll tell you, it wasn't mine.
All right.
I'm apparently not that smart. But yeah, look, and it's one of the things I like about the concept here is that, the things that we talk about. I mean, yeah, we're probably going to delve into some issues in upcoming episodes that are more music based. But I think, the sorts of thing that we're talking about tonight, as you said, Eric, is universal. I mean, there's so many. It doesn't necessarily have to be music. It could be anything. But how many people just feel out of place? Just don't feel like they're where they should be. And the reasons for that are many, but I think that these sorts of discussions, and also, kind of how we try to find a path forward, it's helpful for anybody, whether you're a musician, not playing music for a living right now, or you're an accountant not writing your first book, or whatever it is. I think these sorts of things creep into our heads no matter what our station is in life. At least I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I often wonder, like, my family tells a story. I had an uncle. He passed away now, but he was a cardiologist in Australia, and quite renowned, quite revered in the I don't know if revered is the right word, but very well respected in the medical community in Australia. And the way that my family tells the story is that he, from a very young age, was like, I'm going to be a cardiologist. I'm fascinated by the heart and all its intricacies. That is going to be my life. That will be my passion. And he did it. He went to med school. He became one of the top cardiologists in Australia. And, like,
yeah,
that was it. He lived his passion his entire life, Wow. And I always thought about that story, like going like, how do you know that from such a young age, and I often wonder, and I think I was thinking a lot about this during COVID, because to be honest, I did get a little burnt out too with music. Like, I think by that point it had been 20 years or so,
Definitely happens.
And I built my own little studio, and I wasn't even really using it. It just was a weird time for everyone. But what I sort of kept coming back to was like, I was like, well, when I was a kid, I remember when I was 14, my dad was a teacher, and he could borrow stuff from the school, like from the AV department. And they had this 4-track recorder that you put regular cassette tapes in, and, you could use the stereo on one side and the stereo on the other, and it would so a 4-track recorder. And I remember sitting in my bedroom over the summer holidays, just playing with that thing all day, like recording stuff. And I had like a guitar with a missing string. I don't know what, I think I had some dodgy old microphone that my dad had. I just was like hooking up whatever I could to it,
Is there any old footage of that, Greg?
That would be great.
No, there is no footage.
No.
Well, Eric knows a thing or two about dodgy microphones, apparently.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, that's what I was doing. And, I was writing, like, friends would come over for dinner. Like, we were all us kids were learning different instruments. I was learning the violin at the time. My brother was learning trumpet. My sister was learning the flute, and different family friends. And I would, like, write out, like, Jesus Christ Superstar for the trumpet, just for fun. Like, that was what I wanted to do. And, so I keep, get a life. Everyone else was out, drinking and having partying, getting laid, and I was at home.
He was playing with a 5-string guitar.
Just loving life.
That's what Jacob Collier uses. Jacob Collier, I just found out, uses a strangely tuned 5-string guitar.
Oh, no way.
Well, there you have it. Craig, he ripped you off, Craig.
That was my thing.
He ripped you off.
Anyway, so I sort of think about that when, like, I think you're right, Rich. You go through ebbs and flows. You go through ups and downs. But it sounds like to me, Rich, like that itch is there. That drive is there. It's, as you say, you need to be creative, and even if it's just quote unquote just this podcast for right now, that's something.
Well, I think we're all just so damn hard on ourselves all the time too. Like,
just speak for yourself. I give myself way too many breaks, I think.
But I think that you're doing a good thing by putting up with something that you feel out of place with, something that you're unhappy with, but you are showing up, you're consistent, and you're doing it for the things that matter more than you. Your family, your household, your responsibilities, like you said. There should be a lot of pride in that, and you gotta, but then you have to have something to be excited about. Everyone needs something to be excited about, and like you said earlier, Rich, whether that just kind of stays in the obscure, unknown arena, or it blows up. As long as it was exciting for you and made you happy, and was a break from from feeling out of place somewhere, then it's worthwhile. And you got to create that balance in your life.
Well, I think you made a good point too, that we are pretty hard on ourselves, because all that I see a lot of times, and this is, and my wife and I were actually talking about this the other day. All we see is the failure. All we see are the things that we didn't do, or the areas where we fell short. Just speaking of this past Friday, of course, you guys know a little bit about it, but I was kind of in a situation where I was playing drums where it wasn't overly comfortable, and just wasn't connecting at first, and that's all I thought about. For a majority of the gig until the very end, I was like, man, I'm just not. This ain't happening. It's just, I can't lock in. It's weird, and of course those things just magnify when you start thinking about them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess. And it's really weird too, because I think my generation especially, and I don't know, maybe you guys experience the same thing as kids. My kids know what I wanted to do. My kids know what my dreams were. I didn't know that about my parents. I still don't. My dad passed away, so I can't really ask him, but I don't know what, was there something that he wanted to do? Was there a dream that he had? The same thing for my mom. I had, I know that they come from a generation that was a bit more on the practical side, and those people were our parents. So, I think they had dreams too. They just never really talked about them. And I just think that's kind of weird to me, because I don't know if that shaped us positively or negatively. I don't know, and I certainly wouldn't be the right person to try to answer that question. But I just think it's weird, because sometimes they say you wear your heart on your sleeve. Sometimes we wear our dreams on our sleeves. Sometimes I think that those are out for the world to see, and maybe when we don't reach those dreams, then it's even more crushing to us, because everybody knows we didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if I feel that particular pressure. I think we all put, as Eric kind of alluded to, we all put a ton of pressure on ourselves. We do not give ourselves a break. At least most of us.
When I feel like that, I just try and take it, one small step at a time, and that's what eventually adds up to, to action. That's what makes a difference.
Yeah.
And it's. I'm reminded. I think you mentioned this quote in one of the episodes too, Eric. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's hard not to compare. It's hard not to look at other people, and I don't. Yeah, I mean, I've had an interesting career, and it's ongoing, but I spent my 20s touring the world and doing some awesome stuff and recording in great places and performing in iconic venues around the world. And then I felt this pressure, like, well, I got to keep going. I got to, I got to live up to some sort of standard or something, and I have to admit, I've always thought, dueling pianos, it's a bit hokey. It's not like what I used to do, but man, it's still fulfilling in different ways. But yeah, I do wonder about that. Like people kind of going, oh, okay, well, that's
what happened to him?
Yeah, what happened to that guy?
Yeah.
I mean, I think about that too with like, well, as you said, Rich, at the start, but like, I don't know, like even people that were like in NSYNC or like actors or whatever that end up, for whatever reason, they don't work anymore, and they got to go get a job. And it must be like if you were famous and then people see you working at Walmart or whatever. I mean,
Well, I probably relayed this story to you, but for our adoring audience, they probably haven't heard this. So I'm gonna. It was either an Amazon Prime or a Netflix. I think it was a Netflix documentary called Hired Guns. And they were talking to musicians that played with people like John Bon Jovi and Alice Cooper and Nine Inch Nails and stuff like that, because they hire, touring musicians. They're not really part of the band. And there's one guy, his name was Greg Upchurch. He's a drummer, and he's played for Three Doors Down, Chris Cornell, Puddle of Mud. And he's like, you go, he says, my friends think I'm rich, right. Like they have no idea. I go out on the road and I play in front of all these, thousands of people, and I come home and I got to get a job with my buddy painting houses. And he's like, one day we're painting a house and I'm taking my lunch break sitting on a bucket eating a sandwich, and Matt Sorum, who's the drummer for the Cult and Guns N' Roses and whatnot, comes out and he goes, he's looking at the paint job. He's like, yeah, it looks good. And then he looks at the guy Greg. He's like, oh, you look familiar. He goes, yeah. We met back in Germany when we were touring with Soundgarden. And he's like, oh yeah, wow. How you been? He goes, well, I'm painting your fucking house. How do you think I've been?
Yeah, there you go.
And it's just, those are. That's the business. I get it. And honestly, look, we probably touched on this, and if in one of the episodes, we're talking about what success is. Eric, you had mentioned it. What is success?
Yeah, what is success?
That's kind of that's a very undefinable thing, especially when it comes to the arts. And I think outside of maybe having a little more value attached to some of the things that I had done in the past that were creative, whether it was playing drums or graphic design, which I love to do, or videography or editing or any of that stuff, mixing music and that sort of thing. I'm okay with that. Maybe my dream was to be a rock star one day, but yeah, that's not going to happen now, and that's okay. I like being creative. I like doing these sorts of things, and if that was how how the story of my life is going to be written, I'd be okay with that. Now, my 20-year-old self, maybe not, but I certainly would. It's just sometimes you're not even there. Sometimes you're not even you're not even at that point that you've compromised over the years. You're not even there. And sometimes I think a lot of artists feel that way, especially when they have to make ends meet. When they have to get a job painting a house or working, doing whatever. Look, it's work, and there's no shame in it. But I think they feel some shame in it because it's not what they feel like they were meant to do, or maybe it's not what they were doing last month.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I think that would be a whole nother topic is like stability versus risk,
Oh yeah.
because that is the nature of the business, and the business side of music is really weird and uncomfortable to think about because it's so black and white, but music is so creative, and those two things, it's really hard to put them together, but it is the ugly side of it that you have to you have to be compensated for your whatever job you're doing, and I think back to what I said earlier there, and it was a really interesting point earlier that you made too, Rich, like speaking in terms of generations and how dreaming of doing your true calling has changed over the years is interesting. But I think eventually, there's so many people that dream of doing something more than they are, and you have to try and find content. You have to try and find contentment. You have to try and find happiness, and you have to make time. Really make time for the things that excite you, and try and find that balance.
Yeah, it's funny because that book by I've referenced it before. The book by Bono. He was talking about his dad when he was younger, and of course his dad became a single parent begrudgingly, but after his mom passed away, and he didn't quite understand why his dad was being the way he was being with him. But he said, my dad thought that to dream was to be disappointed, and he didn't want that for me.
Wow.
He wanted solid ground. Now he went about it a way that he didn't really, the younger Paul Houston didn't quite understand. He says he has a much better understanding of it today, but that was probably the prevailing sentiment, which, I mean, I get, you get it. I get it. I don't, like I said, it seems weird to me because, I think most people that know me, kind of know what I wanted to do. Whether, it didn't happen, but they know that. I know my parents pretty well, and I don't know what their dreams were. And I just think that's weird. Did they not have any? Maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
That's a head scratcher. Well, yeah. And so that's where we're at. And, I think the thing to take away from it, and like I said, I'm sure so many people find themselves in this situation. And I think, as Craig, you mentioned staying motivated, and you just finding the time to continue forward. Maybe your journey is going to be different than what you thought it was going to be, and that's okay too. Because you just got to ask yourself, what are you happy doing? Are you, is that 20-year-old dream still plausible? Well, it may not be. And if it's not, well, then, as you said, Craig, recalibrate.
Yeah.
And can you find aspects of what make you happy within what you're doing that makes you unhappy? Is that possible?
Exactly.
Can you, if you find the aspects, find specific things about what you're doing, that you're helping people and you like to help people. So you try and draw from the happy side, and that's a way to combat just getting in a rut. Trying to find things about what you don't like that you do like.
Yeah, and I think it's either Eric, you said it, or Craig said it's an ebb and flow. Sometimes these things are going to seem far more significant than they might a week later. There's always going to be that kind of, ups and downs about that. So, whether it's me or you guys or anybody else, it's not an unusual occurrence to feel that way. So before we go, I'm going to do a little housekeeping here. Just listen to some of the past episodes and had to make some corrections. First of all, I think it was the second episode. It could have been the first episode where Greg referenced the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And Eric and I erroneously attributed that to John
Is
F.
it not Kennedy?
No. God forbid that people think that musicians don't know what they're talking about. But Craig was correct. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
You know what the worst part about that, Rich? Is that he's from Australia.
I know. An Australian kicked our ass in American history. Thank you, public school system. Well done. Well played. Secondly, and
God, I feel like an idiot.
I can't believe it. Secondly, the Craig also mentioned the tall poppy syndrome. And so I did a little research, and it's actually not a horticultural issue.
I see.
Now the tall poppy syndrome, it's used quite heavily in Australia and New Zealand, and it's like a form of egalitarianism. And of course, Craig explained it, which go back and listen to it because it's great. So I won't go ahead and explain it, but where it comes from is, I think it's I'm not going to try to pronounce his first name. Last name is Livy. He's a Roman historian. And this account came from the Roman king Lucius Tarquinius Superbus. Fantastic name. That would be very good for me right now. Superbus. We'll get into that. Anyway, he was said to have received a message from his son, who was Sextus Tarquinius. I'm not making that up either. He was ruling the city of Gibby or Gabby, whatever. And he asked his father what he should do. And since his son had become the powerful ruler of that city, and rather than respond verbally, the king supposedly went to his garden, took a stick, and swiped it across the taller poppies in his garden, cutting them down. And this was relayed to his son by the messenger, who took it as a sign that he should put to death all the prominent people of that city, which he did. So there you have it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. What if he was just doing a bit of gardening?
Yeah.
No, what did you do? I was just
meant
pruning
literally
the poppies.
Just go do some weeding. I didn't realize it had such morbid
past.
yeah.
Apparently, there were earlier accounts of that from Aristotle, but it involved grain and not poppies. So I guess we can throw that out. But yeah, the tall poppy syndrome is synonymous in Australia and New Zealand. That's why we haven't heard of it.
I was gonna say, yeah, you guys had never heard of it.
Yeah, no, I never heard of it. Actually,
there you go.
Yeah, how about that? All right.
Well, look, we're being educational again.
I know. We're bringing the knowledge and the feels.
Absolutely.
So you can't go wrong with that. Yes, that's what we're known for. That's true. Well,
that's good.
We gotta make our mark somehow. Okay, well, look, guys, it's been a good discussion. I appreciate the input. It's been helpful for me. Hopefully, it's helpful for others, because I'm as we talked about before, I'm sure a lot of people have to deal with this.
Well,
I just thought of one more thing. I'm sorry.
All right.
I was listening to this comedian. His name's Ricky Mokel.
Ricky Mokel.
And I think he summarizes it well when he says, in one of his jokes, he said, be what you is. Because if you ain't what you is, or, damn it, be what you is. Be what you is. Because if you is what you ain't, then you ain't what you is.
Wow.
That was it.
I'm perplexed.
I think we're all better for knowing that.
Yeah.
It would have been a lot better if I got it the first time around.
Well, that's the beauty of editing. It's going to sound fantastic. People are like, wow, this guy is a wordsmith. He comes right out, just right off his head like nothing. Yeah, I used to think people really had it all together, and then I realized, and when I was editing, I'm like, oh, that's how they do it, because I sounded actually intelligent on one comment because of editing. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, anything else to add?
I was just thinking that I do feel like this is something that will probably weave its way into a lot of our future conversations. I think it's going to be sort of always, well, I can't put it much better than that. Like,
yeah,
pertinent for lots of different areas. Yep. I'm sure we'll keep coming back to this a little bit. You know.
Oh yeah. I don't doubt it. I mean, all right, guys. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for those listening. Thanks for hanging out with us. We are on YouTube and Spotify. So if you like what you hear on Spotify, that would be subscribe. On YouTube, that would be follow. No, that's wrong. Completely wrong, actually. YouTube, it's subscribe, and Spotify, it's follow. So do all that stuff. Share the podcast if you like it. Leave us comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. So for myself, Eric Forbes, and Craig Henry, we'll catch you next time.